When I first discovered the different types, I didn't see them simply as ways to describe people, but also as strategies you could adopt as and when the situation required. You could think to yourself, what would an ISTJ or an ENTP do in this situation? How would an ENFJ or INTJ solve this particular problem? The different cognitive functions describe our preferences in how we perceive the world and think about it, and also how we make decisions and carry things out. But you can also think about them as skills, ones that any person or any type can work on and improve. So in this series of videos, I'm going to talk about what traits, behaviors, ways of thinking, and so on match up with each function and how you might go about improving them. Reactive, extroverted feeling. FE is often seen as a reactive function, but it's both reactive and proactive. Let's start with the reactive element of it. FE can involve observing what the vibe of a place is and figuring out how to fit in with it. So to improve the reactive aspect of FE, when interacting with people, one-on-one or in groups, ask yourself these kinds of questions. Do the people there have certain beliefs or mindsets that mean certain topics ought to be avoided or approached delicately? How are this person's demographic or personal factors playing into the situation? Does someone say something that makes another person uncomfortable? What are people's social cues implying? Is there an imbalance occurring, where one person is talking more than another? Why is this? Is the person who is talking less happy to be in that role, or are they struggling to find a way into the conversation? FE users don't think about these questions. It's more of a feeling, an instinctive reaction. It's not something they try to do. In fact, at times, they wish they could switch it off. So if this is not a natural process for you, I would quite literally write out questions like this, make a checklist of them, and use them socially, but in your head and not out loud. If you are not naturally good at FE things, it's either because you don't care about them, or because to some extent, you are oblivious to them. I'll talk about the former more later, but if you're in the latter group, simply cultivating and improving your awareness of these things is half the battle. If I had to express this side of FE in one word, it's context. What are the surrounding or underlying factors that make this particular interaction what it is? It's the antithesis of a one-size-fits-all approach to people and interacting with them. Proactive, extroverted feeling. Picture this. You are standing on one side of a bridge. On the opposite end is another person. You want to reach them, to connect with them, to be closer with them, even if it's just temporarily. That's one of the many weird ways I visualize FE. FE is about bridging the gap between yourself and other people. Anything you can do to lessen that distance between yourself and someone else can be thought of as an FE act in some sense. FE, in the short term, wants to alleviate tension, friction, and bad feeling, but those are just proxies for more important things, such as cohesion. If you want to think about FE-like traits in evolutionary terms, it would be about keeping groups together and getting them to function better to stop them disintegrating completely. People who could keep the peace, foster and maintain harmony, build bridges and bonds between people, and be unifying would be very valuable, and still are, of course. So FE, in terms of its behavior, is a very relational function. It's people-centric, kind of by definition. It involves proactively bridging the gap between yourself and other people, knowing the best role to take. Typically, types with high FE are the ones who will bend in accommodating ways. I think this can be perceived and described in ways that make it seem overly deferential and submissive even, but that's the wrong way to view it. It's fluid, adaptable, and capable of molding itself to fit the environment it's in. There are many dynamics that can occur between people, both one-on-one and in groups. In these interactions, you can choose which role you want to take. If the other person is bursting with energy and enthusiasm and clearly has a story they want to tell, then take the role of listener. If the other person is quiet and reluctant to talk, then take the role of the person who talks and leads the conversation, or ask them questions to navigate them onto topics that captivate their interest and enable them to talk freely. It's a very simple concept. It's about identifying which role you can take to bring about the best interaction. Okay, fine, but what if I don't care about these things? Well, watching a video about how to improve FE is probably pointless, although thank you for adding to the watch time of the video. Much appreciated. Certain types simply do not value these FE things. If you really can't bring yourself to care, but are still having issues with not being great at this stuff, there's two approaches you can take. The first is one I'm a huge fan of, and that is simply to address it up front. You can tell people that you sometimes come across as brash, rude, offensive, aggressive, or even just that you struggle socially at times. The reason this works so well is because of what I mentioned before. FE is about context And more broadly, the social realm is about context. Many things you could say or do aren't objectively bad, they're bad in context. People have established and expected particular social rules to be followed, and if you break them, it makes people feel uncomfortable. But if you simply tell people how you are, it changes the context. Now their expectations will be different. Essentially, the rules won't apply to you in the same way. Of course, there are limits to this. You can't say, I'm a bit offensive, then proceed to roast everyone in your life indefinitely. Although that would be hilarious. So there is wiggle room here. FE is also a highly communicative function. If you're dealing with a high FE user, then over-communicating is probably a better approach. Misunderstandings are things they really dread, precisely because it robs them of knowing the context in a situation. The second approach is simply to treat FE as a necessary evil en route to things you actually want in life. Yes, it might be annoying, inconvenient, and just irritating, but it has a purpose, a function, and gets you to where you want to be. Okay, but what if I'm sort of good with FE? Many introverts will experience this Cinderella approaching midnight feeling, where your social battery is being drained to the point where you're about to drop off a cliff. This can result in your demeanor changing from pleasant to snarky and irritable. Well, for certain types who have FE, but lower down in their function stack, this can be an even bigger issue. It's like they have an FE limit, beyond which things can go downhill. The best approach, if this is you, is simply to have shorter social interactions. This can be difficult, depending on your circumstances, but if you commit to it, people will eventually come to see it as a trait of yours. If there's a party, or gathering, or meetup, or whatever, and you feel like disappearing and leaving would be rude, then just take a long break. And make sure to pop in again to show people that you didn't completely abandon them. Long-time and hardcore followers of the channel will know who Luann is. Back when she was in the videos, and I was the editor, she would often talk about her husband, who isn't me, just for the record. He's an INTP, and she'd often mention that in social settings, if they went out together, he'd periodically disappear, then reappear later on. I always found that weird. Like, how do you do that? Well, when I travelled to stay with them in the US, I witnessed this firsthand. I'd suddenly noticed that he'd vanished, somehow. Then he'd return later, seamlessly. If you can master this ninja-like skill, then I would recommend it. It allows you to dip in and out of social interactions, and have these mini recharge sessions. You can get a little bit of your energy back, and feel less drained, and more in control. If you would like to bridge the gap between yourself and me, then please subscribe to the channel. And if you want to go even further, then feel free to join the Love Who Discord server. The link is down below in the description of the video.